Good morning, dear students. Today we will be moving to a new chapter, that is the last chapter of your part 2 textbook, that is semiconductor and electronic devices. Semiconductors and electronic devices. So you all are familiar with the word semiconductor, and from your smaller classes onwards you will be hearing this word when you study the different types of materials like conductors, insulators, etc. So if you are asked to define the term semiconductor, from the word itself it has the meaning like semiconductors, which means that the conductivity lies in between conductors as well as insulators. Okay, so semiconductors are neither conductors nor insulators. Their conductivity or the range of conductivity will lie in between insulators and conductors. As you know, conductors are the materials which can conduct easily, and insulators are the materials which do not conduct, isn't it? But semiconductors, under certain suitable conditions, they will conduct. Their conductivity will lie in between insulators and conductors. So how can you define it? Yes, you can define it as the materials whose conductivity lies between conductors and insulators. Okay. So semiconductors were discovered in early 1920, 1930s. Okay, and even though they are very small devices, they could make large revolutions in technology. As you know, almost all the electronic devices like laptops, phone, then in IT level, anything if you are taking, it consists of semiconductors. So semiconductors has certain advantages. Before the discovery of semiconductors, this function was actually done with the help of vacuum tubes. Okay, so vacuum tubes. The basic building blocks of any electronic circuits are the devices which have controlled flow of electrons. So if we want to make a device, or if you want to make an electronic circuit, the basic building blocks of that electronic circuit should have the property to control the flow of electrons. It should control the flow of electrons. So before the discovery of semiconductors, vacuum tubes did this function. Okay, so these vacuum tubes have two electrodes which we call as cathode and anode. And they are also called as diode valves. Diode valve. Okay. And the tubes which have three electrodes we call as cathode, anode and grid. We call it as triode valves. Triode valves. Okay. But there were certain disadvantages with these vacuum tubes because such devices were bulky, large in size. Okay. Bulky, then it consumes high power. And these vacuum tubes generally operate at high voltage and have limited life and also low reliability. Okay, so vacuum tubes were considered as the basic building blocks of any electronic circuit before this semiconductors were discovered, and there were certain disadvantages for the vacuum tubes. Which were they were bulky, large in size, they consume high power, they need high voltage to work, then it has limited life, and it is having low reliability. And because of these limitations, semiconductors were introduced in the year 1920-1930s. Okay, so in the case of semiconductors, simple excitation with the help of light, then heat, or any small applied voltage, okay, light, heat, then small applied voltage can change the number of charge carriers. We call the, for example, electrons are a kind of charge carrier. So in the case of semiconductors, we use the term charge carriers, which are able to conduct. By the movement of charge carriers, the conduction happens. We will discuss it in detail. So just keep it in mind. The charge carriers, the mobile charge carriers are there. It can be electrons, holes, etc. in the case of a semiconductor. So by applying simple excitations like heat, then light, or small applied voltage can change the number of these charge carriers in a semiconductor. Then the supply and flow of charge carriers in these devices are within the solid itself. So no vacuum needed or external heating is not required. So these devices are very small in size. They consume less power. They operate at low voltages. They have long life and high reliability. Clear? So there were certain advantages for semiconductors over vacuum tubes. Okay. Now why these semiconductors are important? Because there are mainly so many properties are there for semiconductors, but still we have to discuss one or two as the important properties that a semiconductor possesses. The first one is it can control the number of charge carriers. It can control the number of charge carriers, or I must say the conductivity can be controlled. So by using semiconductors, the conductivity can be controlled, or it can control the number of charge carriers. I already told that inside a semiconductor, the charge carriers are either electrons or holes. Okay, I will discuss these holes later. So it can control the number of charge carriers, or you can say it can control the conductivity. That is one of the property of what this semiconductors. Now the second one is it can give unidirectional current. The current can be made to flow only in one direction. That is, it can give unidirectional current. That is another property that these semiconductors have, and that is why semiconductors are considered to be very much important nowadays. Okay, so that's all about the basics. Now we will move to the classification of these conductors, then metals and conductors, semiconductors and insulators on the basis of conductivity. Okay, this much is clear for you. These are the introduction for semiconductor and electronic devices. Now we will move to the next section. So you all know the terms resistivity and conductivity. We have studied in the chapter current electricity. So if a material has very high resistivity, it will be having very low conductivity, isn't it? Because resistivity is the reciprocal of conductivity. Resistivity can be represented as rho and conductivity can be represented as sigma. So 1 by sigma. Rho is equal to 1 by sigma. So based upon the values of resistivity and conductivity, the materials can be classified as conductors, insulators and semiconductors. Okay, so let us have a check on that. First of all, conductors, materials. Under the category of materials, we can write conductors. And you know, conductors have very low resistivity and high conductivity. Very low resistivity and high conductivity. So resistivity is of the order of 10 raised to minus 2 to 10 raised to minus 8 ohm meters. 10 raised to minus 2 to 10 raised to minus 8 ohm meters. Okay. Now conductivity in the order 10 squared raised to 10 raised to 8. Just take the reciprocal of this value. So you will get the conductivity and its unit is Siemens per meter. Siemens per meter. Okay. Now second one is the semiconductors. Semiconductors. So they have resistivity or conductivity intermediate to these conductors and insulators, right? So here the resistivity will be in the order of 10 raised to minus 5 to 10 raised to 6 ohm meters. 10 raised to minus 5 to 10 raised to 6 ohm meters. So what will be its conductivity? As it is 10 raised to 5 to 10 raised to minus 6 Siemens per meter. This is the range for semiconductors. Okay. Now we are moving to the value of insulators. For insulators, you know, they have high resistivity and low conductivity. Okay. So for insulators, their resistivity is of the order of 10 raised to 11 to 10 raised to 19 ohm meters. 10 raised to 11 to 10 raised to 19 ohm meters. So what will be its conductivity? As it is 10 raised to minus 11 to 10 raised to minus 19 Siemens per meter. 10 raised to minus 11 to 10 raised to minus 19 Siemens per meter. Okay, and the values of this resistivity and conductivity given here are indicative of magnitude and could go outside the ranges as well. Okay, so it's just a reference for you. And here our interest is about the study of semiconductors in this chapter, and semiconductors can be classified into two types mainly. They are elemental semiconductors. So semiconductors can be classified into two. First one is elemental semiconductors and second one is compound semiconductors. Elemental semiconductors and compound semiconductors. So semiconductors which are available in natural form are known as elemental semiconductors. Which are available in natural form are known as elemental semiconductors, and the examples you may be familiar with, they are silicon, germanium, etc. Silicon, germanium, etc. Okay. Now compound semiconductors are made by compounding the metals. For example, it has classifications like inorganic semiconductors, then organic semiconductors and organic polymer semiconductors. So compound semiconductors are formed by the compounding of metals like, and they are again classified into inorganic, organic and organic polymers. So now you have to just keep in mind some examples for inorganic, organic as well as organic polymers. So first of all, for inorganic semiconductors you can write CDS, then gallium arsenide, okay, then indium phosphide, etc. These are examples for inorganic semiconductors. Now for organic you can write, you may have heard this word anthracene in chemistry, then doped phthalocyanins, okay. So anthracene, then doped phthalocyanins are example for organic semiconductors. Now for organic polymers you can use the example of polyaniline. So many examples are there, so just you have to keep this in mind. Semiconductors are basic classification on like elemental and compound semiconductors, where elemental semiconductors are the semiconductors which are available in natural form, example silicon and germanium, and compound semiconductors include inorganic, organic as well as organic polymer. Then examples also you must be aware of, okay. So next our topic is energy bands in solids, which is very important, and based on this energy bands, conductors, insulators and semiconductors can be classified, okay. So on the basis of energy bands also we have to distinguish between conductors, insulators and semiconductors. Just now we wrote with respect to this resistivity and conductivity. Now first we will understand what is an energy band, what are the types of energy bands, and after that we will move to the classification, that is like insulators, conductors and semiconductors on the basis of energy bands. So what is an energy band? You all have studied Bohr's atomic model and the concept of electronic configuration in an isolated atom. So you have studied that for an isolated atom, the electrons have certain definite discrete amounts of energy, isn't it? Discrete amount of energy corresponding to different shells and subshells. That is, there are well defined energy levels of electrons in an isolated atom, isn't it? There are, you can state like this, according to Bohr's atomic model, there are well defined energy levels of electrons in an isolated atom. But here in the case of a crystal, if you are considering a crystal, due to the interatomic interaction, valence electrons are shared by more than one atom. You have studied in chemistry, right? If you are considering a crystal, the valence electrons are shared by more than one atom. So due to this, because of this sharing, the splitting of energy levels take place. Okay, so as per Bohr's atomic model, there are well defined energy levels, but when we are speaking with regard to crystals, you know, in the case of crystals, the valence electrons are shared by more than one atom. So because of this splitting, the splitting of energy levels take place. Clear? Now in such a level, if you are speaking, there will be large number of energy levels, isn't it? Since this one energy level gets splitted, means there will be collection of energy levels. So this collection of closely spaced energy levels is called an energy band. So what is an energy band? The collection of closely spaced energy levels. It is known as energy band. So how these bands are formed? As these bands are formed due to the continuous energy variation. Continuous energy variation in different energy levels. Okay. Continuous energy variation in different energy levels. So these different energy levels in different electrons are formed because inside the crystal each electron is having a unique position, isn't it? And you have studied that no two electrons is exactly at the same pattern of surrounding charges, isn't it? So that's why we are getting different energy levels in different electrons. These all things you have studied in your chemistry. So once again, energy band means the collection of these closely spaced energy levels is known as energy band. These bands are formed due to the continuous energy variation in different energy levels. Now these different energy levels in different electrons are formed because inside the crystal each electron is having a unique position and no two electrons is exactly at the same pattern of surrounding charges. Okay, so these energy bands are actually of two types. They are valence band and conduction band. Valence band and conduction band. So valence band, how can you define? Valence band means the energy band which includes the energy levels of the valence electrons, outermost electrons. So energy band which includes the energy levels of the valence electrons. They are known as valence band. So this band may be partially or completely filled with electrons, but it is never empty. Okay, so valence band can be partially filled or completely filled, but it's never empty. Clear? Now what are conduction bands? Conduction band means the energy band above the valence band is called conduction band. As I told, the energy levels will get splitted, no? So large number of energy levels will be there. Suppose this is considered as the valence band. The energy level just above the valence band, we call it as the conduction band. Understand? So at room temperature, this conduction band is either empty or partially filled with electrons. Now electrons can gain energy from external electric field and then they jump from valence to conduction band and contribute to the electric current. That's what we are going to discuss. Okay, so it consists of two bands, valence band and conduction band. Valence band means the energy band which includes the energy levels of the valence electrons. This band may be partially or completely filled, but it's never empty. But the conduction band means it is just above the valence band, separated by a distance. At room temperature, this band is either empty or partially filled with electrons. Electrons in the valence band can gain energy from external electric field and they jump towards the conduction band. When they reach the conduction band, they will contribute to electric current. That's how the current is produced or conduction is happening inside any material. Understand? So based on this, you can differentiate between conductors, insulators and semiconductors. Okay, so let us move to that. So first we will discuss conductors. Now before moving to the conductors, we already told that we have valence band here. These are the splitted energy levels in valence band, as well as we have conduction band at the top, isn't it? So this is conduction band. When we apply suitable field, external field, the electrons present in the valence band will be excited to the conduction band. Okay, now here you can see a gap. This gap we call as the energy band gap. Energy band gap. Okay, so what is this energy band gap? It is actually the gap between the top of the valence band and bottom of the conduction band. The gap between top of the valence band and bottom of the conduction band. It can be zero, small, or it can be large depending upon the material. Sometimes the conduction band is very close to valence band. In such a case, there is no energy band gap, so it will be zero. Sometimes it will be at a larger distance from the valence band. So in such cases, the energy band gap is more. Sometimes medium, like that will change depending upon the material. Okay, so how will you define this energy band gap? It is the gap between the top of the valence band and bottom of the conduction band. Okay, in other words, if you are saying, you can write the minimum energy required for shifting electrons from valence band to conduction band. Okay, the minimum energy required for shifting electrons from valence band to conduction band is called energy band gap. It can be represented as Eg. Okay, Eg. Clear? Now we will discuss conductors on the basis of energy bands. So in a conductor, actually there is no energy gap between conduction band and this valence band, because the conduction band is partially filled with electrons and valence band overlaps each other, overlaps the conduction band. That means if you are drawing that energy band diagram, it will be like this. That is, this is valence band, this is valence band. Okay, now here close to this valence band we have conduction band. Understand? This is conduction band and this is valence band. Now here what is happening is, this conduction band and valence band overlaps each other, so that this energy gap Eg is equal to 0. Okay, so the many electrons from this valence band can shift to higher energy levels of the conduction band and behave as free electrons for acquiring a little more energy from any other sources. So easily the electrons will move to conduction band. That is why we call it as conductors, because here conduction is possible easily since there is no gap. Easily the electrons from valence band will move to the conduction band with the help of small excitation. Understand? So here Eg is equal to 0. Understood? Now if you are considering insulators, if you are asked to draw the energy band diagram, in this way you can draw there. Because in insulator the valence band is completely filled. Valence band is filled with electrons, and then the conduction band is completely empty. Okay, and you can see there is a large energy gap in between, which is almost greater than 3 electron volt. Understood? So it is very difficult that the electrons from valence band should move to the conduction band. Even though we are supplying external energy, it is very difficult to have a shift of electrons from valence band to conduction band. So the electrons are bound to the valence band and they are not free to move, so that the electric conduction is not possible in the case of insulators. Understood? So this is the gap. The gap is almost greater than 3 eV. This is valence band and this is conduction band. So in the case of insulators, valence band is completely filled, whereas the conduction band is empty. Only when the conduction band consists of electrons or charge carriers, conduction is possible. Understood? Now we are moving to the semiconductors. So in the case of semiconductors, this is our valence band and this is our conduction band. Okay, now the gap between these two is less than 3 electron volt. Okay, so here the valence band is totally filled, and conduction band is empty. But you can see that the energy gap between conduction band and valence band, unlike insulators, is very small, isn't it? So at room temperature, some electrons in the valence band acquire thermal energy greater than this energy band gap and jump over to the conduction band. And in the conduction band, they are free to move under the influence of even a small electric field and they acquire a small conductivity. Clear? So here what is happening is, even at room temperature also, if you are giving external field, means they will suddenly move to conduction band because the gap is very small. But even at room temperature, they are able to move to the conduction band because of the small energy gap. And when they reach the conduction band, they are free to move, and because of their movement, conduction is possible. Okay, so this is the energy band diagram for semiconductors. So this section is important because you may be asked to draw the energy band diagrams for conductors, then insulators and semiconductors, and also the difference between conductor, insulator and semiconductor on the basis of energy bands. Okay, so be clear with this topic so that we can continue the next class easily. Okay, so study well. Have a nice day and thank you.